Caesar's banner is here for a few more days, so before she makes space for our favourite pyromaniac, let's see whether she really is the king we expected her to be. I've been seeing a bit of discussion here and there about how Caesar compares to Qingyi. A few other creators have done testing regarding her time to stun and her buffing potential. So I wanted to do a second comparison with a Cinema 1 Qingyi, who should have around about a 30% faster stun compared to C0. Now this Caesar is at C0 with her signature Wenjin. However, they're both buffing a Yuan with slightly lower attack than what you'd ideally be running. That should even it out a little. Something to remember about her is that she has very flexible field time. You can run her in more of a quick swap style like with Caesar, or give up a large amount of field time with Robocop. Which is better? Let's find out. You should already know how Qingyi's team plays, so let's explain the Caesar team. Honestly, this team felt a lot more natural for me to play than the Qingyi team. I find having to play so heavily around a supportive character like Qingyi a little bit awkward. I have been playing Anby in a fairly similar quickswap style anyway, so the rotations and combos with Caesar came pretty naturally for me. My friend has generously loaned me his account for this video, and unfortunately he doesn't have C1 Yuan, which I think would only make this comp even more comfortable. You'll see me doing a few basic combos here and there to rebuild shot shells. You probably won't need to do this nearly as much with C1. In terms of stun, I do think it can feel a little too slow compared to some other teams. Caesar has decent burst stunning, but if we ever see another stunner who had 20 to 25% more stun, I think it would feel perfect for this style of play. I did 3 tests with each team, one in Notorious Hunt, one in Critical Node, and one in Ambush Node. In terms of overarching themes, Qingyi continues to outperform against less aggressive bosses, and anything that can be melted within a single stun window. I found Qingyi a little vulnerable sometimes where you have to tank certain attacks to get the fastest stun speed. Even though dodging can be good, it doesn't feel quite as rewarding to be attacked as it does with Caesar. This Yuan isn't super well built, which became pretty evident in this critical node here. I was always slightly short of clearing within a single stun window. Yeah, this is a build issue. Anyway, the dog really wants defensive assists to break the armor faster, so Caesar felt a lot more comfortable in this fight, considering quick swap would naturally incorporate more defensive assists. For Qingyi, you can still do the swap tech with Nicole, giving you both the parry bonus and Qingyi's final charge attack, but you are somewhat at the mercy of RNG timing with this. The Caesar team had one run here where we were slightly short of clearing within the stun window. The runs are pretty similar clear times, at just over a minute. I think with a bit more damage, the Qingyi run should be a little faster, but only by about 5 to 10 seconds. So I would rate these similarly in terms of damage. However, I think Caesar wins out in this fight, specifically in regards to comfort. Moving on to Ambush Node, this was definitely where I saw the least variance between each team. I did manage to hit this roughly 36-second clear with each team. Unfortunately, the Caesar footage was corrupted, but this kind of a run felt like a 1 in 10 or lower chance anyway. I couldn't repeat it after I lost the footage, since it is purely dependent on how well the Thanatos group up, rather than being skill or damage based. The average runs here were about the same, with both teams clearing under a minute at around 55 to 58 seconds each. This test was primarily about multi-target content that might prefer Caesar for his shield, and as we've seen so far, Caesar isn't really that much of a loss compared to Qingyi in Critical Node. In Ambush Node, there's really no difference at all. I will note that I often tanked a lot of attacks with Qingyi in order to get her stun multiplier off. If the bosses ever do even more damage, Caesar would win again in terms of comfort and potentially have a slight edge in speed too. Notorious Hunt is where things get really interesting. We've known for a while now that when Qingyi's good, she's real good. It does help a little that she's C1 and starts with a full gauge, but also that the boss has a phasing stage where she can refill her gauge for free. Even if we take that away, she's still performing 15 to 20 seconds faster than the best season run. On average, Caesar's team was sitting around the 2-minute mark, whereas Qingyi was consistently putting up 1 minute 38 seconds in my runs. Right now, the fights in GU don't have phasing mechanics, however if we get more endgame content around bosses, Qingyi could really shine there. So let's go over the pros and cons. Qingyi feels like much more of a specialist. Her kit is designed around stun, so if stun windows are shortened, like with Shadow Jane, or days build up is harder, she might lose some value. Right now, Caesar offers a lot more flexibility long term, as well as some defensive utility. Another thing to consider with Caesar is that her buffs aren't locked by its stun. In content like Withering Garden 11, you would expect Caesar to pull ahead, since stun time is shortened and days build up is reduced. With Caesar, you still gain all her buffs for the whole fight, as well as her defensive utility, allowing you to play around the challenging content much easier. If Oyo decides to try and push stun out of meta in certain modes, Qingyi could really struggle, while Caesar would be fine. It's something to keep an eye on for the future, but since that isn't an issue in the current endgame, I didn't test it. One last thing to note, Qingyi to me felt a little too slow at C0 when I've tested her in the various modes, whereas with C1 she definitely feels like a premium stunner. That in itself is a bit of an issue, but we've known for a while now that Qingyi isn't the fastest stunner in the roster, and her stun damage multiplier is supposed to make up for that. When we compare her to Caesar though, I think we have to consider that Caesar is a much better all-rounder with fewer downsides. With Qingyi, you can see much higher peaks, but she's a bit more all-in. I think she has more potential to be insane if given the right DPS to support. She's likely to come in and out of the meta as different DPS characters and teams take that top spot. She's never going to be useless, but her spot in the meta is likely to fluctuate as much as her clear times. Caesar is the opposite. Not only is her buff consistent and easy to apply, but almost no other character in the game can be slot into any team with this much success. Most of our other supportive characters have their niche or are specific to certain playstyles or elements. So if you're wondering who to pull, my advice? Wait, that's my plan anyway. Honestly, I prefer using Anby over either of these units, but maybe that's just because I'm used to her. We also don't know whether a better stunner for Yuan is right around the corner, or whether Qingyi will hold that spot for a long time. Caesar is definitely the safer choice if you were wanting to 100% pull one or the other, especially if you're looking at DPS options other than Yuan. However, for Yuan specifically, you're likely to see slightly better results with Qingyi given the right conditions. Either way, don't feel the need to pull a character when the meta is so young, and we're still able to clear content with our 4 stars. It's a marathon, not a race, and I for one, am so excited to see how the meta develops.